Recovering from an Addiction in 12-Step. What is recovery according to the 12-Step model?
There's a lot of different definitions that I've come across over the years, but I would say recovery is more of an orientation to life. I think it has to do with honesty, with dealing with the issues that come into your life in an honest, open way, being teachable, being willing to let go of things that no longer serve you, being willing to let go of behaviors and manipulations and beliefs that no longer serve you, and being more appreciative of the present moment and the fact that we all have a very limited amount of time on this planet, and to live that with the greatest, I guess, appreciation and reverence for a way of life that is going to bring happiness and serenity and openness to all of us. And how that's going to look on the outside is probably going to be a little bit different for every person, but how that manifests in their life, I think, tends to be pretty universal in that there is less of a fearful approach to life. There's more of an openness to what life brings. There's more of a living in the present moment rather than being obsessed with the past or the future. And there is an openness to what life is going to bring your way without trying to control it before it ever happens.
What is the goal of 12-Step recovery?
A recovery program is basically aimed at restoring balance to a person's life. If you are dealing with a sexual addiction and you go to Sex Addicts Anonymous, and the only way of you being able to not engage in that behavior is to go to the meetings, maybe for a period of time, that would be the most important thing for you to do. If you find that 10 years down the road, it's not serving the same function anymore, and it's becoming more of like your primary connection to the outside world, and you're sort of like substitute addiction, then maybe you need to look at doing something else, because until a person has restored a sense of balance in their life, and where they're taking care of themselves emotionally and psychologically and spiritually and in their interactions with others, I don't feel they've really achieved that kind of balance.
What can I expect as I begin the 12-Step recovery program?
There's a term in AA, and just in substance abuse treatment, that they call a dry drunk, where a person is not drinking, but all of their behaviors are as out of control as if they were actively using. And the same thing can be with behavioral addictions. Once you abstain from your behavior of choice, a lot of other things are going to start coming up. A lot of feelings are going to start coming up because you've been using that as a way to stuff down a lot of other uncomfortable feelings, awarenesses that you've had, and they're going to all come back again. You need to deal with them. And that's where you need to get some outside help that will allow you to maneuver through this. And chances are, once you've lost your objectivity, it's going to be hard to do it on your own. That's why we have the fellowship groups. That's why we have, professionals in the field that can help you. And you may say, well, you said that it's an internal process. It is. But the one thing that humans are very good at is lying to themselves and justifying their behaviors to themselves and blaming others for problems. And it's like that's where you need someone, whether it's a sponsor, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a trusted friend, to be there as kind of like a mirror for you as you go through this process.
How can family and friends support a 12-Step program member?
To educate themselves is one way. I think that there are a lot of myths and a lot of misperceptions about what addiction is. I think that if you are under the mistaken belief that it's just an act of will, and if people would just get their act together, they could take care of this stuff, that you really don't understand the process of addiction, and you don't understand how to be helpful to your loved one, that you're acting more out of your fear and your control than actually wanting to understand this phenomenon and how to best deal with it.
What skills are needed for a successful recovery in a 12-step program?
Honesty, openness, being teachable, being willing to look at yourself closely.
What does it mean to take one day at a time in a 12-step organization?
I think it's just realizing that the only reality that humans have is in the moment, that anything else is an illusion. When we get caught up into memories or memories of the past or fantasies of what the future is going to be, we're not living in the moment, and the moment is all that's real. So as soon as we move into either of those realms, and we would say, well, we're planning and everything, the thing is we're dealing with illusion. And the problem with an addiction is that once you start to think about tomorrow, you can think about every tomorrow for the next 5 years, for the next 30 years, for however long, and you can get caught up into a fantasy that may never come to be. And the one day at a time is like, okay, come back to your senses. What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you hearing? This is what's real. Not all of this other stuff. Not all of these stories you tell yourself about who you are and what life should be or what life shouldn't be or how you've been abused by life or how you're going to make it big. It's like, do what you can during the day, but realize that the only reality is right now. And all I have to deal with is right now because everything else is a fantasy or a memory.
How can I handle emotional changes during the 12-step process?
In some cases it's fear, but I'd say it's generally wanting to avoid pain and wanting to enhance pleasure. Sometimes the pain is fear, and if you project that fear into the future, it's anxiety. Sometimes it's anger. It's self-righteous indignation. How dare life do something to me, or how dare that person do something to me? You know, it could be the desire to connect with people. What starts out as maybe a positive desire to connect becomes an obsessive kind of behavior when it turns into sexual addiction. So, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily fear, but it is about avoiding pain and increasing pleasure. As long as you're alive, you're still going to be coming up against your emotions, and you're going to be experiencing uncomfortable emotional states, and you're going to be experiencing loss and change throughout your entire life. That's what we're all given, whether we're addicts or not. We have to face that. And I think that there are ways that we can come to terms with that are maybe more healthy or less destructive than some of the others. And I think it involves making a decision about what is most important to me. And that's where a recovery program is important. It's not about where I'm going to be in 5 years. It's about where I'm going to be at this moment. And most of the time, and I think meditators will tell you this, and just anyone that goes outside and is just struck by the beauty of the world, when you're in the moment, you generally don't have a lot of problems. You can pretty much deal with what's ever there. It's when we get into our heads and into our projections into the future or our ruminating over the past that we start to have the problems.